The first gunshot split the silence of the New Mexico dawn, startling a flock of crows into the pale sky. Emma Harrington's breath caught in her throat as she watched from behind iron bars, her fate hanging on the steady hand of a man she'd known for barely a month. Levi Grant stood alone in the dusty street, facing 10 armed men who blocked his path to the jailhouse where she waited. It was 1878, and justice in Redemption Springs had long since been corrupted by greed and power. The rising sun cast long shadows across the dirt road as Levi planted his boots firmly in the earth, his worn leather duster barely moving in the morning breeze. "You're a fool, Grant," called Jasper Thornton, the cattle baron, whose word was law in these parts. 10 guns against 1. All for some schoolteacher who don't know her place. Emma clutched the cold bars, her knuckles white. 6 weeks ago, she'd arrived in this frontier town with hopes of building a new life, teaching children their letters and numbers. Now she stood accused of a murder she didn't commit, framed by the very men who wanted her silenced. "Last chance to walk away," Thornton shouted. "No woman's worth dying for." Levi's hand hovered near his holster, his face impassive beneath the shadow of his hat. "One bullet's enough for justice," he called back, his voice carrying across the silent street. "And she's worth everyone I've got." Emma had never known a man like Levi Grant. The first time he'd walked into her schoolhouse, hat in hand with a shy smile beneath his sun-weathered features, something inside her had shifted. At 32, he carried himself with the quiet dignity of a man who'd seen too much, but hadn't let it break him. "You can't do this," she had whispered to him the night before, when he'd slipped past the deputy to visit her cell. There are too many. He'd reached through the bars then, his calloused fingers gentle against her cheek. "I made you a promise, Emma. I aim to keep it." Now, as dawn broke over the mountains, Emma watched in horror as Thornton gave the signal. His men spread out, forming a half-circle around Levi. "You got till I count 3 to clear out of my town, cowboy," Thornton called. 1. Levi didn't move. 2. His right hand twitched slightly. 3. What happened next unfolded like a terrible dream. Levi's hand moved with impossible speed, his revolver clearing leather before most of Thornton's men had even touched their weapons. The first shot took down the man to Thornton's right. The second found another gunman as he fumbled with his holster. Emma screamed as gunfire erupted in the street, the sound echoing off the buildings like thunder. She couldn't look away as Levi rolled behind a water trough, bullets splintering the wood around him. 3 men were down, but 7 remained, their faces twisted with rage as they advanced. Sheriff Miller appeared beside her cell, keys jangling. "This wasn't supposed to happen," he muttered, unlocking her door. Thornton just wanted to scare him off. "You knew?" Emma gasped, backing away from him. "Get out of here, Miss Harrington," Miller said, not meeting her eyes. "There's a horse saddled out back. Head north toward Fort Simmons. Your cowboys bought you time, don't waste it." Emma hesitated, torn between escape and the desperate need to help Levi. Another volley of gunfire decided for her. She gathered her skirts and ran through the jailhouse and out the back door, where a chestnut mare waited, already saddled. As she mounted, one final glance toward the street showed Levi, bloodied but still fighting. 2 more of Thornton's men sprawled in the dirt. Their eyes met across the distance, and he gave her a single nod before turning back to face his remaining opponents. Emma dug her heels into the horse's flanks, tears streaming down her face as she galloped away from Redemption Springs, away from the man who was sacrificing everything to give her a chance at freedom. The vast New Mexico territory stretched before her, wild and unforgiving. She had no weapon, little money, and only the clothes on her back. But she had something else, a fierce determination to survive, to find help, and to return for the man who'd risked everything for her. What Emma didn't know as she rode away was that Levi Grant had a plan, and it was only beginning to unfold. The sun climbed higher as Emma pushed the chestnut mare harder than she should have, the animal's coat lathered with sweat. 5 miles north of town, she veered off the main trail into a stand of cottonwoods beside a small creek, allowing both herself and the horse to rest. Her hands shook as she splashed cold water on her face, trying to wash away the image of Levi surrounded by gunmen. She barely knew him, yet in the short time since he'd arrived in Redemption Springs, he'd become the center of her world. They'd met when he brought his young nephew to her schoolhouse. The boy, orphaned and silent after losing his parents to fever, had needed special attention. Levi had stayed after school one day to thank her for her patience. "Most folks would have given up on him," he had said, twisting his hat in his hands. "Means a lot that you didn't." Something in his eyes, a mixture of gratitude and admiration, had made her cheeks flush. In the weeks that followed, he'd found reasons to cross her path, fixing the schoolhouse roof, delivering firewood for the winter, bringing books he thought might interest her students. Then came the night of the fire at Thornton's warehouse. Emma had been walking home late from visiting a sick student when she saw the flames. She'd also seen something else, Thornton and the sheriff loading crates onto a wagon behind the burning building, crates marked with government seals. They'd spotted her before she could slip away. The next morning, she'd been arrested for arson and the murder of the night watchman, a man she'd never met, killed with a knife that somehow bore her fingerprints. "It's your word against Thornton's," the sheriff had told her with false regret. "And in this town, that's no contest at all." Only Levi had believed her. Only Levi had promised to help. Now she was free. But at what cost? The distant sound of hoofbeats snapped her from her thoughts. Someone was coming. Emma scrambled up the bank, prepared to flee, when a familiar voice called out, "Miss Harrington, it's me, Daniel Morgan." Daniel, the blacksmith's son, rode into view on a spotted gelding. At 19, he was one of her former students, having finished school just months before she arrived in Redemption Springs. "Mr. Grant sent me," he said, sliding from his saddle. "Said I'd find you here." "Levi's alive?" Hope surged through her. Daniel nodded. "Wounded, but alive. They've taken him to Thornton's ranch. Trial's set for tomorrow, though everyone knows what the verdict will be." "How did he escape?" Emma asked, bewildered. "He didn't exactly fight to win," Daniel explained, reaching into his saddlebag. "Just fought to give you time. But he made sure 3 men wouldn't get up against Thornton's worst. The others took him alive." He handed Emma a bundle containing a man's shirt, trousers, and a wide-brimmed hat. "Mr. Grant said to give you these. And this." He passed her a folded paper and a small revolver. The note was brief, written in a steady hand. "Emma, don't come back for me. Head to Santa Fe. Find Marshal Thomas Reeves. Tell him what you saw. What follows is proof." Below was a detailed account of weapon shipments, names, dates, information that would implicate Thornton in selling rifles to renegade bands who were attacking settlements. "How did he know all this?" she whispered. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Grant isn't just some cowboy. He's been tracking Thornton for months, working with the federal marshal's office." Emma's mind reeled. He let himself be captured. "Yes, madam. Said something about needing to be inside to get final proof." Daniel looked worried. "But Thornton's not planning any trial. His men are talking about a hanging at dawn tomorrow." Emma clutched the paper, her resolve hardening. "I'm not going to Santa Fe." "Mr. Grant figured you'd say that," Daniel sighed. "That's why he told me about his friends." "Friends?" "Former soldiers. Men who rode with him during the war and after. There's 4 of them camping in the hills north of here. He said if you insist on being stubborn, I should take you to them." Emma changed into the men's clothing behind a screen of brush, tucking her hair beneath the hat. The disguise wasn't perfect, but it would have to do. "Lead the way, Daniel," she said, checking the revolver before tucking it into her waistband. "We have plans to make." Thornton's ranch lay 10 miles east of town, a sprawling kingdom of adobe and timber built with money that had never been honestly earned. 20 men guarded the property, most of them hired guns with little loyalty beyond their next payment. Levi Grant sat in a tack room that had been converted to a cell, his right arm roughly bandaged where a bullet had grazed him. Another wound in his side burned like fire, but he forced himself to breathe through the pain. Everything depended on timing now. The door swung open, and Thornton himself entered, flanked by 2 guards. At 50, the cattle baron was still powerfully built, his silver hair and tailored clothes giving him the appearance of respectability. "You've caused me considerable trouble, Grant," he said, pulling up a stool. "3 good men dead." "Good isn't the word I'd use," Levi replied evenly. "Murderers and thieves, more like." Thornton laughed, a sound without humor. "Says the man who just gunned down 3 people in the street. Self-defense has a different meaning than ambushing a federal witness." At this, Thornton's facade of amusement dropped. "So the schoolteacher talked. Doesn't matter. She won't get far." "She's already beyond your reach," Levi said, watching Thornton's expression carefully. "No one's beyond my reach in this territory." Thornton leaned forward. "I own judges from here to Santa Fe. I own the governor's chief aide. Whatever she thinks she saw, it's the word of a murdering arsonist against a respected businessman." "Is that what you're calling yourself these days?" Levi shifted, wincing at the pain in his side. "I've been tracking your operation for 6 months, the weapons you've been selling to the renegades, the military supplies you've diverted. I've got names, dates, shipments." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Thornton's face. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Levi smiled grimly. "Why do you think I came to Redemption Springs? It wasn't for the climate." Thornton stood abruptly. "Hang him at dawn," he ordered his men. "No trial, no witnesses, and send riders after the woman. I want her body brought back as proof." After they left, Levi leaned his head against the wall, conserving his strength. The plan was in motion. Emma was safe, or as safe as she could be. His friends would protect her if she found them, and if she didn't, well, he'd made sure she had what she needed to reach the authorities. What he hadn't counted on was how much it would hurt to send her away. In the short time he'd known her, Emma Harrington had become more to him than just another witness to protect. Her quiet strength, her dedication to her students, the way her eyes lit up when she smiled, he'd found himself looking for excuses to see her long before duty required it. Now, as he prepared for what might be his last night alive, it wasn't the mission he regretted, but the things left unsaid between them. Dusk was falling when Emma, Daniel, and 4 hard-faced men crouched on a ridge overlooking Thornton's ranch. The men had introduced themselves simply as Jackson, Cooper, Hayes, and Monroe, former cavalry soldiers who had served with Levi during the war and after. "Thornton's got at least 20 men," Jackson, their apparent leader, observed through a spyglass. "Most are concentrated around the main house and the bunkhouse." "Where would they keep Levi?" Emma asked. "Tack room," Cooper answered. "Southeast corner of the barn. It's the only place with a lock that couldn't be easily broken." "You seem familiar with the layout," Emma remarked. Hayes, the youngest of the group at perhaps 25, grinned. "We've been watching this place for weeks. Part of the plan." "What plan?" Emma demanded. The 4 men exchanged glances before Jackson spoke. "Levi's been working to bring down Thornton's operation for months. We're part of a larger team. The marshal's office has been trying to stop the flow of weapons to the renegades." "And you need proof," Emma concluded. That's what Levi was after. Monroe, who had said little until now, nodded. "Thornton keeps a ledger, all his transactions, his partners, everything. It's in a safe in his study." "So why didn't you just raid the place?" Daniel asked. "Too many innocent people could get caught in the crossfire," Jackson explained. "And without the ledger, Thornton's partners would walk free. We needed someone on the inside." "But then I complicated things," Emma said quietly, "by witnessing their activities that night." "You became a liability they needed to eliminate," Jackson confirmed, "but also an opportunity. Levi saw a chance to get inside." "By playing the hero," Emma felt a surge of anger. "By risking his life in some foolish standoff?" "He was supposed to get himself arrested trying to help you," Cooper clarified, "not face down 10 gunmen in the street." "That wasn't part of any plan we discussed," Jackson added with a hint of exasperation. Emma remembered Levi's words in the street. 1 bullet's enough for justice. He'd been willing to die for a principle, for what was right, for her. The realization both warmed and terrified her. "So what's the new plan?" she asked. Jackson outlined it quickly. They would wait until midnight when most of the ranch would be asleep. Hayes and Cooper would create a diversion at the bunkhouse, drawing attention away from the main house. Meanwhile, Jackson and Monroe would help Emma get to the tack room to free Levi. "What about the ledger?" Emma asked. "That's secondary now," Jackson said. "Getting Levi out alive is the priority." "No," Emma shook her head firmly. "We need that proof. Otherwise, this all happens again somewhere else." The men stared at her in surprise. Daniel looked concerned. "Miss Harrington, it's too dangerous." "I agree with the boy," Monroe said. "The study is in the main house. Too risky." Emma thought of the children in her classroom, of the families who would suffer if men like Thornton continued operating with impunity. She thought of Levi, willing to die to stop them. "I'll get the ledger," she said with determination. "Just tell me where to look." After intense debate, they reluctantly agreed to modify the plan. Emma, in her men's clothing, would accompany Jackson to the main house while Monroe freed Levi. If anything went wrong, they would abort the mission and escape however they could. As night fully descended, Emma checked the revolver Levi had sent her. She had fired a gun only once before, when her father had taught her basic protection on their journey west 3 years earlier. She prayed she wouldn't need to use it tonight. "It's time," Jackson announced as the ranch's lights began to dim one by one. They moved silently down the ridge, approaching from the east where the shadows were deepest. Emma's heart pounded so loudly she feared it might give them away, but her hands remained steady. At the edge of the property, they separated. Hayes and Cooper headed toward the bunkhouse, while Emma followed Jackson and Monroe toward the main buildings. They had almost reached the barn when a voice called out, "Who's there?" A guard stepped from the shadows, rifle raised. Monroe reacted instantly, launching himself forward and clamping a hand over the man's mouth while bringing him to the ground. There was a brief struggle before the guard went limp. "He's just unconscious," Monroe whispered, binding the man's hands and feet. "But we've lost the element of surprise. You need to move quickly." Emma nodded, her mouth dry with fear. Jackson led her toward the main house while Monroe continued to the barn. The back door of Thornton's house was locked, but Jackson made quick work of it with tools from his pocket. They slipped inside, finding themselves in a darkened kitchen. "Study's upstairs," Jackson whispered. "Second door on the right." They crept through the house, freezing at every creak of the floorboards. From outside came shouts and the sound of breaking glass, Hayes and Cooper creating their diversion. The study was empty, illuminated only by moonlight through tall windows. A large desk dominated one wall, and behind it stood an iron safe. "Can you open it?" Emma whispered. Jackson examined the lock. "Given time." "But we don't have much." More shouts came from outside, followed by gunfire. The diversion was working, but it would bring everyone to alert. "Work fast," Emma urged, moving to the doorway to keep watch. Jackson knelt before the safe, pressing his ear to the metal as he carefully turned the dial. Minutes stretched like hours as Emma listened to the commotion outside, her hand tight around the revolver. Suddenly, footsteps sounded on the stairs. Someone was coming. "Hide!" she hissed to Jackson, who slipped behind heavy drapes. Emma barely had time to duck behind the door before it swung open, and Thornton himself strode in, lamp in hand. He went straight to the safe without noticing her. As he reached for the dial, Emma stepped forward, the revolver steady in her hands. "Step away from the safe, Mr. Thornton." He spun around, shock giving way to recognition despite her disguise. "The schoolteacher," he sneered. "I should have known you'd try something foolish." "Open it," she demanded. "Or what? You'll shoot me." His confidence was maddening. "I don't think you have it in you." "Maybe not," Emma admitted. "But I only need to wound you, and I'm a very good shot at this distance." It was a bluff, but Thornton couldn't be certain. After a tense moment, he turned to the safe and began working the combination. "You won't get away with this," he said as the safe door swung open. "My men will hunt you down." "Step aside," Emma ordered, ignoring his threats. Inside the safe lay several bundles of cash, documents, and a leather-bound ledger. Emma reached for it, keeping her eyes and the gun trained on Thornton. "That's enough," came a new voice from the doorway. Sheriff Miller stood there, his own revolver pointed at Emma. "Drop the gun, Miss Harrington." Emma's heart sank. The sheriff's appearance changed everything. But before she could decide what to do, Jackson emerged from behind the drapes, his gun pressed to Thornton's head. "I suggest you reconsider, Sheriff," he said calmly. Miller hesitated, caught between targets. "Your move," Jackson told him, "but consider your future carefully. The federal marshal is already on his way with a detachment of soldiers. This operation is finished, with or without that ledger." Emma could see the calculation in Miller's eyes, his loyalty to Thornton wavering in the face of his own self-preservation. "Put it down, Sheriff," she said softly. "No one needs to die tonight." After what seemed an eternity, Miller lowered his weapon. "I was just following orders," he muttered. "Save it for the judge," Jackson replied, quickly disarming him. Emma grabbed the ledger, tucking it securely inside her shirt. "Let's find Levi and get out of here." They bound and gagged both men, leaving them in the study. As they slipped back downstairs, the commotion outside had grown. Gunfire echoed across the ranch yard. "Something's wrong," Jackson muttered as they exited the house. They could see figures moving near the barn, exchanging shots. The diversion had clearly escalated into a full-blown firefight. "Stay close," Jackson ordered as they ran toward the barn, keeping to the shadows. Inside, they found Monroe helping a pale but alert Levi to his feet. Blood had soaked through the bandage on his side. "Emma?" Levi's eyes widened in disbelief and anger. "I told you to go to Santa Fe." "I received your message," she replied, patting the ledger beneath her shirt. "I just chose to interpret it differently." Despite the pain, a reluctant smile tugged at his lips. "Stubborn woman." "We need to move," Monroe interrupted. "Hayes and Cooper are outnumbered." They helped Levi outside, where the gunfight had intensified. Hayes had taken cover behind a water trough, exchanging fire with several of Thornton's men. Cooper was nowhere to be seen. "This way," Jackson directed them toward the stables. "We'll need horses." As they crossed the open space between buildings, a shot rang out, and Jackson stumbled, clutching his arm. "Keep going," he grunted, returning fire. Emma helped support Levi, who was weakening with each step. She could feel the warmth of his blood soaking through her own clothes where she held him. "Leave me," he gasped. "Take the ledger and go." "Not a chance," she replied firmly. They reached the stables, where Monroe quickly saddled horses, while Emma and Jackson defended the doorway. Outside, more of Thornton's men had joined the fight. "Where's Cooper?" Monroe asked as he worked. As if in answer, a tremendous explosion rocked the night. The bunkhouse erupted in flames, sending Thornton's men scrambling for cover. "That would be Cooper," Jackson said with grim satisfaction. "Always did have a way with explosives." Emma helped Levi mount one of the horses, though it clearly caused him significant pain. She climbed up behind him, supporting his weight as Monroe and Jackson mounted their own animals. "Hayes will meet us at the rendezvous point," Monroe said, leading the way out the back of the stables. They rode hard into the darkness, the sounds of chaos fading behind them. Levi slumped against Emma, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Stay with me," she whispered fiercely in his ear. "We're almost safe." They rode through the night, pushing the horses as much as they dared. Dawn was breaking when they reached a small cabin nestled in a canyon, well hidden from the main trails. Cooper was already there, sporting a bloody gash across his forehead, but otherwise intact. Hayes arrived an hour later, having led several of Thornton's men on a wild chase before losing them in the hills. Emma helped Monroe tend to Levi's wounds. The bullet in his side had gone deep, but miraculously had missed vital organs. With careful cleaning and stitching, he had a good chance of recovery. "You should have gone to Santa Fe," Levi said weakly as she bathed his forehead. "And you shouldn't have faced 10 men alone," she countered. A ghost of a smile crossed his pale face. "I didn't think they'd all shoot at once." "What were you thinking?" The fear and worry of the past day crashed over Emma like a wave. "You could have been killed." "I was thinking of you," he admitted softly. Of keeping you safe. Emma's hand stilled. Why? You barely know me. Levi's eyes, though clouded with pain, held hers steadily. Some things you know right away, Emma Harrington. I knew the moment I walked into your schoolhouse and saw you teaching that shy Reynolds girl how to read. The way you were so patient, so kind. I'd spent years seeing the worst of humanity. Then there you were, like a light in the darkness. Emma felt tears threatening. That's no reason to risk your life. It was reason enough for me. His hand found hers, fingers interlacing. Besides, I had a job to do. You just gave me a better reason to do it right. Jackson entered the cabin, interrupting the moment. Marshal Reeves and his men are a day's ride from here. We sent Cooper to bring them in. The ledger? Levi asked. Emma produced it from inside her shirt. Every transaction, every name. Levi's relief was visible. Then it was worth it. Rest now, Emma told him. We're safe here. As Levi drifted into sleep, Emma stepped outside the cabin. The morning sun illuminated the canyon in shades of gold and amber. For the first time since her arrest, she allowed herself to truly breathe. Jackson joined her, his arm now properly bandaged. You did well back there. Kept your head when many would have panicked. I was terrified, she admitted. That's what courage is, being afraid but doing what needs to be done anyway. He nodded toward the cabin. He's a good man, Levi, one of the best I've known. I'm beginning to see that, Emma said softly. He wasn't supposed to get involved with you, you know. It complicated things. I didn't exactly plan it either, Emma replied. Jackson smiled. Some things can't be planned. Sometimes life has other ideas. They fell silent, watching the sun climb higher. Whatever happened next, Emma knew her life had irrevocably changed. The schoolteacher who had come west seeking a quiet life of purpose had found something she never expected: danger, adventure, and perhaps, if they were both lucky, love. Marshal Thomas Reeves arrived with 8 soldiers the following day. A tall, imposing figure with iron-gray hair and a reputation for incorruptibility, he listened gravely as they recounted everything that had happened. We've been building this case for over a year, he explained, examining the ledger. But Thornton was careful, always kept himself at a distance, used intermediaries. This, he tapped the leather-bound book, this is what we needed. What about Thornton and the sheriff? Emma asked. My men have secured the ranch, Reeves assured her. Thornton, Miller, and 6 others are in custody. The rest scattered once they realized the game was up. And the charges against Miss Harrington? Levi asked from his bed, where he was sitting up for the first time since their escape. Dropped, Reeves said firmly. We have testimony from one of Thornton's men confirming you were framed. He was quite eager to cooperate once he understood the alternatives. Emma felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She was free, truly free, for the first time in weeks. What happens now? She asked. There will be a trial in Santa Fe, Reeves explained. Both of you will need to testify, but that's still some weeks away. He glanced at Levi's wounded side. First, Agent Grant needs to recover. Agent? Emma looked at Levi in surprise. A sheepish expression crossed his face. I may have omitted a few details about my occupation. Reeves chuckled. Levi's one of my best operatives, been working undercover for the past 3 years, dealing with situations like Thornton's. Though this is the first time he's gotten himself shot over a schoolteacher. Emma felt her cheeks warm. It wasn't his fault. No, Reeves agreed, his expression softening. Some things are beyond our control. Speaking of which, he reached into his coat and produced an envelope. This came for you, Miss Harrington, from the Territorial Education Board. Emma accepted it with trembling fingers. Inside was a formal letter offering her a position at the new school in Santa Fe, citing her exemplary dedication and courage in the face of adversity. How did they know? She asked, bewildered. I may have sent a few telegrams, Reeves admitted. Good teachers are hard to find in the territory, and Santa Fe is a growing city that needs them. Emma read the letter again, hardly daring to believe it. A new start. in a place where Thornton's influence couldn't reach her. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "Don't thank me yet," Reeves warned with a twinkle in his eye. "Teaching the children of politicians and judges has its own challenges." After the marshal left to make arrangements for their journey to Santa Fe, Emma sat beside Levi's bed. The others had tactfully made themselves scarce, giving them a rare moment of privacy. "So, Agent Grant," she said, trying to sound stern despite the smile tugging at her lips, "any other secrets I should know about?" "A few," he admitted, reaching for her hand, "but I'm hoping to have time to share them all." Emma entwined her fingers with his. "Is that a promise?" "If you'll have me," he replied, suddenly serious. "I know this isn't what you signed up for when you came west to teach school." "No," she agreed. "It's far more complicated and dangerous." And I wouldn't change a thing," she said softly. "Except perhaps you getting shot, that I could have done without." Levi's laugh turned into a wince as it pulled at his stitches. "Noted. I'll try to avoid that in the future." They fell silent, the weight of all that had happened and all that might yet come settling between them. "I meant what I said that morning in the street," Levi finally spoke. "You are worth every bullet I have." "I'd rather have you alive and unshot," Emma replied, "but I appreciate the sentiment." He smiled, that slow, careful smile that had first caught her attention in her schoolhouse. "I can work with that." 2 weeks later, a small convoy departed for Santa Fe. Levi, still weak but healing, rode in a wagon with Emma beside him. Marshal Reeves and his men provided escort, along with Jackson, Cooper, Hayes, and Monroe, who would serve as witnesses at the upcoming trial. As they crested a hill, Emma looked back at Redemption Springs one last time. The town lay peaceful in the distance, unaware that its most powerful citizen now sat in a jail cell awaiting justice. "Having second thoughts?" Levi asked, noticing her gaze. Emma shook her head. "Just saying goodbye to what might have been. A quiet life teaching school in a small town. You could still have that, you know," he said carefully. "After the trial. Anywhere you wanted." She turned to him, studying the face that had become so dear to her in such a short time. "And what about you?" "Back to being an agent, chasing outlaws across the territory." "Actually," Levi shifted, grimacing slightly at the pain in his side, "Marshal Reeves offered me a position in his Santa Fe office, administrative work mostly, training new agents." "Sounds terribly boring for someone used to gunfights at dawn," Emma teased. "It does, doesn't it?" Levi's eyes held hers. "But I'm finding my priorities have changed recently." Emma's heart quickened. "Oh?" "I'm thinking I might like to put down roots, find a place that needs a former agent with too many scars and not enough sense, according to some." "I never said you lacked sense," Emma protested, then smiled. "Although facing 10 armed men might suggest otherwise." "It worked out," he reminded her. "And I only needed 1 bullet to start things off." "1 bullet's enough for justice?" she quoted softly. "That's what my father always said," Levi explained. "He was a lawman in Texas, taught me that it's not about how many shots you fire, but making the right one count when it matters most." "A wise man." "He would have liked you," Levi said with certainty. "Strong, stubborn, refusing to leave a wounded man behind even when he expressly ordered you to." "I don't take orders very well," Emma admitted. "I've noticed." His hand found hers again, a touch that had become familiar and precious. "It's one of the many things I love about you." The word hung between them, both a declaration and a question. Emma's answer was to lean forward and press her lips to his, a gentle kiss that held promise of more to come. When she pulled back, his eyes were wide with surprise and something deeper. "I should get shot more often," he murmured. "Don't you dare," she warned, but she was smiling. The wagon rolled on toward Santa Fe and whatever future awaited them there. Emma knew there would be challenges, the trial, building a new life, finding their way together. But for now, with the vast New Mexico sky above them and Levi's hand warm in hers, that future seemed full of possibility. 6 months later, Santa Fe was celebrating the completion of its new schoolhouse. Flags and bunting decorated the two-story building that stood as a testament to the growing city's commitment to education. Emma stood on the steps watching as her students filed in for the first time, their faces alight with excitement. At 26, she had found her place as head teacher, responsible for 30 children ranging from 6 to 16 years of age. The trial of Jasper Thornton and his accomplices had ended 3 months earlier, with convictions on all counts. The evidence in the ledger, combined with testimony from Emma, Levi, and several of Thornton's former men who had turned state's evidence, had been overwhelming. Justice had been served, though not without cost. During the proceedings, one of Thornton's few remaining loyal gunmen had attempted to silence Emma as she left the courthouse. If not for Levi's vigilance and quick reflexes, she might not have survived. The would-be assassin now shared a cell with his employer, and Levi had earned a commendation from the territorial governor, along with another scar to add to his collection. "Miss Harrington," called a small voice, pulling Emma from her memories. Sarah Collins, her youngest student, tugged at her skirt. "Are we really going to have books for everyone?" Emma smiled, kneeling to the child's level. "Yes, indeed. Every student will have their very own reader." "Even the big kids?" Sarah's eyes widened in wonder. "Especially the big kids. They have much more to learn." Emma stood, smoothing her skirt. "Now, find your seat. We're about to begin." As the last children entered, Emma noticed a familiar figure leaning against a hitching post across the street. Levi tipped his hat to her, that slow smile warming his features even at a distance. Since their arrival in Santa Fe, he had settled into his role at the marshal's office, training agents and occasionally venturing into the field when his expertise was needed. He had also become a regular visitor to Emma's classroom, captivating her students with carefully edited tales of his adventures and teaching the older boys the principles of tracking and wilderness survival. Their courtship had progressed slowly, both of them healing from old wounds, some visible, others hidden beneath the surface. But with each passing week, the connection between them had deepened. Emma finished the day's lessons as the afternoon sun cast long shadows through the classroom windows. After the last student departed, she gathered her materials, extinguished the lamps, and locked the schoolhouse door. Levi was waiting for her, now seated on a bench in the small garden that fronted the building. "How was the first day?" he asked, rising to greet her. "Chaotic, exhilarating, exactly as it should be." She accepted his offered arm as they began walking toward her small house 3 blocks away. "The children seemed impressed with their new teacher," Levi observed. "I watched them leaving, not a single frown among them." "Wait until they receive their first assignments," Emma laughed. "The honeymoon will end quickly enough." They walked in comfortable silence for a moment before Levi spoke again, his tone more serious. "I received a telegram from Marshal Reeves today. He's been appointed to a federal position in Washington." "That's wonderful news," Emma said. "He deserves the recognition after all he's accomplished here." "He's recommended me as his replacement." Emma stopped walking, turning to face him. "As territorial marshal?" "Levi, that's incredible." He looked uncertain, a rare expression for him. "It would mean more responsibility, longer hours sometimes, more risk potentially. But also more ability to effect real change," she pointed out, "to continue the work you've been doing, but on a larger scale. You wouldn't mind?" Emma tilted her head, studying him. "Why would I mind? I've always known who you are, what drives you, even when you were pretending to be just a cowboy with a nephew." "That part wasn't pretending," he clarified. "My sister's boy really did need help. He's doing well now, by the way. My brother-in-law writes that he's talking again, making friends." "I'm glad," Emma said sincerely. They resumed walking, the evening air cooling as the sun dipped behind the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. "There's something else," Levi said as they approached Emma's cottage. "Something I've been meaning to ask you." Her heart quickened at the tone in his voice. "Yes?" He stopped at her gate, turning to face her fully. "I know we haven't known each other long, by some standards, Less than a year since that morning in Redemption Springs. The longest and shortest year of my life, Emma said softly. Mine too. His hand found hers, but I've never been more certain of anything than I am of this of us. From his pocket, he produced a small velvet box. Emma's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a simple gold band set with a single pearl. Emma Harrington, I love you. Your courage, your kindness, your stubborn refusal to do as you're told when you know you're right. His voice was steady, but she could see the vulnerability in his eyes. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Emma felt tears welling up, but they were tears of joy. On one condition, she managed to say. Levi's expression was a mixture of hope and wariness. Name it. No more facing down 10 men alone. We face whatever comes together from now on. Relief and love washed across his features. I think I can agree to those terms. He took the ring from its box. Is that a yes, then? Emma held out her trembling hand. It's a yes, Levi Grant. Yes to being your wife, your partner, whatever the future holds. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then drew her close, kissing her with a tenderness that made her heart ache. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling through tears. I should warn you, Levi said, touching his forehead to hers. Marriage to a lawman comes with certain unpredictabilities. And marriage to a schoolteacher means you'll always have your grammar corrected, she countered. His laugh was warm against her skin. A fair trade. As twilight deepened around them, Emma opened her gate and led Levi into the small garden that fronted her cottage. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, lessons to teach, justice to uphold, a wedding to plan. But tonight, in this moment, there was only the two of them and the promise of all that lay ahead. One bullet was enough for justice, Emma mused, echoing his words from that fateful morning. But it takes far more to build a life. Good thing I've got plenty of ammunition, Levi replied, drawing her into his arms once more, and the best possible reason to use it wisely. In the years that followed, the story of the schoolteacher and the lawman who faced down corruption in Redemption Springs became something of a legend in the New Mexico territory. Embellished with each telling, it grew to epic proportions. 10 men became 20, one bullet became none, as the cowboy supposedly stared down his opponents without firing a shot. The truth, as Levi and Emma knew it, was both simpler and more complex. Justice had prevailed, but not without cost. Love had bloomed in unlikely circumstances. And two people who might never have met in a more orderly world had found in each other exactly what they needed. Their wedding took place the following spring, a simple ceremony in Santa Fe's new church with Marshal Reeves officiating before his departure for Washington. Jackson, Cooper, Hayes, and Monroe stood as groomsmen, having become not just colleagues, but family through their shared experiences. Levi took up his new position as territorial marshal with Emma's full support. Together, they built a home on the outskirts of Santa Fe, a place of warmth and welcome for agents, teachers, and anyone else who needed sanctuary. 2 years after their marriage, they welcomed twins, a boy and a girl who inherited their mother's intelligence and their father's steady determination. The children grew up surrounded by books and stories, learning early the value of both education and justice. Redemption Springs eventually faded from prominence as the railroad bypassed it for larger settlements. But occasionally, someone would pass through Santa Fe with news of the town, of how it had slowly rebuilt itself after Thornton's fall, becoming the kind of place its name had always promised. On the 10th anniversary of that dawn confrontation, Levi and Emma returned to Redemption Springs. The dusty street where he had stood alone against overwhelming odds was now lined with new buildings. The jailhouse where she had been wrongfully imprisoned had been converted to a library. They stood together in the early morning light, the same hour but a world away from that desperate day. "Any regrets?" Levi asked, his arm around her waist. Emma looked up at him, at the silver now threading through his hair at the temples, the lines of experience that framed his eyes. The years had changed them both, but the essential truth remained: they had found in each other a partnership neither had dared hope for. "Not one," she replied, leaning into his embrace. "You?" He shook his head, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Only that I wasted so many bullets that day when, as it turns out, all I really needed was one." "One bullet for justice," Emma agreed, "and a lifetime for love." The sun rose fully over Redemption Springs, illuminating a past transformed and a future still unfolding, one day and one choice at a time.